The system doesn't fear rebellion. It prints rebellion on t-shirts and sells it back to you. What the system fears is independence. A man who no longer needs the machine. When you stop needing approval, credit, validation, or comfort, you become ungovernable. And ungovernable men break economies built on obedience. That's why they design everything to make you dependent. School trains compliance, jobs sell stability, media sells dopamine. Every ad, every rule, every distraction is built to keep you pulling the lever like a fucking lab rat. The self-made man breaks that loop. He doesn't ask permission. He builds his own table, prints his own chips, and flips the house's middle finger while walking out richer, calmer, and freer than the drones who stayed. When I was broke in London, I saw the Matrix clearly for the first time. I lived in a freezing apartment, bare mattress on the floor, counting coins to buy dinner. Nobody cared. The world doesn't hand out sympathy for losers. And it shouldn't. That's when I realized nobody was coming to save me. The system isn't designed to rescue. It's designed to recycle. Keep you broke, tired, just comfortable enough not to rebel. I didn't need charity. I needed control. I started fighting literally and financially. Kickboxing in the morning, hustling online at night. The first month I made a few £100. It wasn't the money that mattered. It was the switch in my head. The moment I stopped being their product and started being my own producer. That's when the fear left. That's when the system lost grip. The self-made man terrifies the world because he doesn't play by its emotional rules. The average man complains about unfairness. The self-made man studies it, weaponizes it, and profits from it. Governments can't tax that mindset. Corporations can't market to it. Feminized culture can't shame it. The self-made man moves like a ghost. He learns, earns, and disappears before the system knows where to aim. That's why they censor. Not because words are dangerous, but because ideas are contagious. If too many men realize they can live without permission, the entire pyramid collapses. The economy runs on weak men pretending they're free. One strong man ruins the illusion. Look, I've been banned, canceled, and called every name under the sun, and yet my message still spreads faster than their propaganda. Why? Because you can't ban truth that lives in the hearts of men who've tasted reality. They can delete accounts, not awareness. The more they silence, the louder the silence becomes. When they banned me, I didn't cry victim. I built faster. I moved platforms, changed strategies, multiplied income streams. That's why the system fears self-made men. We evolve. We adapt under pressure instead of collapsing. The Matrix builds cages of comfort. We build muscle under friction. Pain becomes our profit center, not our prison. The modern world worships comfort like a god. Cheap entertainment, instant validation, easy dopamine. It keeps men soft, broke, and silent. The self-made man rejects that religion entirely. He trades comfort for conquest. He wakes early, lifts heavy, reads, invests, and executes while everyone else scrolls. Discipline replaces emotion. Mission replaces mood. Every rep, every line of code, every deal signed is rebellion. That's why they mock masculinity. They need you ashamed of the one force that can break their control. They call confidence toxic, aggression dangerous, leadership patriarchy. Words are weapons, and they use them to neuter you. The self-made man takes those words, melts them down, and builds armor. Money is not about luxury, it's about leverage. When I made my first million, I didn't buy peace of mind. I bought distance from manipulation. The richer you become, the fewer cages can hold you. But that's what they hate. They need men chasing money but never owning it. They'll sell you credit, loans, fake investments, anything to keep you in chains. I built businesses that couldn't be shut down by one platform, one law, or one algorithm. That's sovereignty. And every time I teach that, they panic. Because dependence is their power source. Every self-made man who exits the system weakens the grid. That's why they brand us villains. Freedom looks dangerous to slaves. The first time I realized control was everything was in the ring. Opponent swings, you adjust. Not react, not panic, just adapt. Life is the same fight on a bigger canvas. The system throws fear, failure, rejection. You counter with focus, skill, and composure. The crowd screams. You stay silent. That's masculine power. That's why they dismantle it. Because calm strength doesn't consume. It builds. The self-made man operates from internal command, not external permission. Every punch life throws becomes feedback, not defeat. That's how we rise while others break. Every empire built on control dies from exposure, and self-made men are exposure incarnate. We show the weak what's possible. We remind them mediocrity is a choice. That's why the Matrix calls us arrogant. Confidence looks arrogant to the insecure. Independence looks dangerous to the dependent. I tell men the truth. You're not tired, you're undisciplined. You're not unlucky, you're unfocused. You're not oppressed, you're untrained. And the system loses its grip every time one man believes that. Because the second you accept responsibility, nobody owns you anymore. That's freedom. That's why they fear it like fire. The truth is, the world doesn't want strong men because strong men don't buy escape. Why weak men do? They need you medicated, distracted, arguing over bullshit while they collect your time. A strong man's silence bankrupts them. That's why they market noise. TikTok, Netflix, gossip, all pacifiers for men who've lost mission. I tell you to log off, lift, learn, build, and they lose billions. That's why they shadow ban me. They can't sell silence, but silence builds empires. The self-made man is their worst customer. He buys discipline, not dopamine. He sells truth, not trends. He lives lean and lethal. That's the template they never want you to download. When I teach men to escape the matrix, I'm not selling rebellion. I'm selling reality. The real red pill isn't rage. It's results. Build your body, your bank, your brand, your brotherhood. That's how you disconnect from the lie. Every hour invested in discipline is one less dollar for their system. That's why they fear you improving. Self-development doesn't just fix your life. It fucks their business model. A man with self-control is unprofitable. A man with purpose is unpredictable. A man with faith in himself doesn't need their gods. That's why they push nihilism. The matrix feeds on hopeless men. Faith in self is rebellion. Progress is protest. Profit is revenge. Independence isn't isolation. It's insulation. A fortress built from discipline, awareness, and wealth. I built mine brick by brick. Kickboxing taught resilience. Business taught leverage. Hate taught patience. Bands taught adaptation. Every loss became a lesson. Every attack became marketing. They tried to bury me, but I was the seed. That's the essence of self-made. You turn their weapons into workouts. You use pain as a data point, fear as fuel, pressure as practice. And when you rise again, stronger, sharper, richer, they call it luck. It's not luck. It's law. Consistency under chaos creates kings. They fear self-made men because we expose the illusion of control. The system survives on belief. Stop believing and it collapses. Every time you make money online, lift weight, or reject comfort, you chip at its foundation. The matrix can't enslave men who master themselves. That's why every narrative tells you to relax, enjoy life, don't stress. Stress builds strength. Pressure creates diamonds. The comfort cult breeds peasants. Pressure builds kings. The system fears self-made men because we don't need it. And the moment you stop needing it, you start to rule it. The real battlefield isn't politics or culture. It's money. The system doesn't need to chain your body if it owns your wallet. Every paycheck, every tax, every interest rate is a leash disguised as progress. You think you're earning, but what you're doing is trading freedom for stability. They build the illusion of choice. Loan options, investment apps, corporate ladders. But every path still routes through their hands. A man who depends on the system for income is a man who must obey. That's the quiet genius of modern slavery. You sign up for it voluntarily, chasing security that never arrives. The self-made man becomes the ghost in this machine because he reverses the flow. He prints his own permission slips. He learns the game, then plays outside the casino's walls. That's what they fear. Financial independence doesn't start with $1. It starts with defiance. When I first learned to make money online, I saw the matrix shift. It was small at first. Affiliate links, digital services, small wins. But each transaction taught me that value is invisible currency. Once you can produce value without approval, you can produce freedom without apology. That's why they never teach it. School drills formulas, not flow. Jobs reward time, not results. They hide the truth that leverage beats labor every single time. A self-made man looks at the system and says, if I can make one sale by myself, I can make 1,000. That sentence alone terrifies every institution built on dependence. The banks operate like temples and debt is their religion. They preach convenience while harvesting obedience. Swipe the card, Sign the papers. Enjoy now. Pay forever. The interest isn't just financial. It's psychological. You think about payments before you think about dreams. The mind trapped in repayment can't imagine beyond survival. That's why they love credit culture. It keeps men working for yesterday's pleasure instead of tomorrow's purpose. A self-made man breaks that pattern by refusing to borrow comfort. He invests in assets that pay back twice. Once an income, once an identity. Every time you choose creation over consumption, you weaken the system's hold. Taxes are the most elegant form of control ever designed. You work all year and they take half, then call it contribution. They tell you it funds roads, schools, safety, but most of it feeds inefficiency and power. They don't fear the billionaire who funds campaigns. They fear the small entrepreneur who learns to structure legally, move smartly, and keep his own reward. Because a man who masters tax law stops being a subject and becomes a strategist. Knowledge is the loophole they never wanted you to read. Financial literacy is rebellion. That's why it isn't taught in classrooms. An educated worker is a threat. A financially literate man is a revolution. The market rewards attention and the system sells distraction. Every scroll, every ad, every trending outrage pulls you from production to consumption. They don't want you building. They want you reacting. The self-made man learns to monetize focus. He turns skill into service, ideas into income, and audience into autonomy. That shift turns algorithms upside down. The moment you start using the same tools they built for control to create your own leverage, you stop being the product. That's why censorship hunts independence. Not because the message is violent, but because it's viral. Independence spreads faster than propaganda when men start winning on their own terms. Governments need compliance. Corporations need dependency. The self-made man serves neither. He builds small ecosystems that can't be easily taxed or tracked. Digital products, private networks, physical skills that translate across borders. He doesn't chase pensions or titles. He builds pipelines. Multiple flows of value mean multiple exits from control. The system hates optionality because optionality kills obedience. When you can work from anywhere, earn from anything, and live without their institutions, they lose leverage. And without leverage, power becomes persuasion. And persuasion is weak against truth. The economy is a theater, and fear is the ticket price. Recession, inflation, collapse. They whisper it constantly because anxious people don't invest, they hoard. Fear keeps liquidity trapped inside their walls. A self-made man moves opposite the herd. When others panic, he studies patterns. When others save, he buys control. Skills, land, systems, ownership. That's not greed. It's strategy. The system labels confidence as risk, so you'll never play. But the bigger risk is obedience. Inflation proves it every year. Prices rise because the machine keeps printing. A man who prints his own value never inflates. He multiplies. That's the math they never teach. Money is moral only when earned through strength. Easy money weakens character. Hard money fortifies it. The self-made man embraces friction because it sharpens instinct. Every sale closed, every contract negotiated, every customer served trains perception. You stop fearing failure because you start calculating it. That's the shift the matrix can't predict. Men who turn losses into frameworks instead of trauma. Once you view the economy as a combat sport, every setback becomes data. That's why they flood culture with victimhood. Victims buy escape. Builders buy leverage. One mindset feeds control, the other breaks it. When I talk about wealth, I'm not preaching greed. I'm preaching sovereignty. Real wealth is measured in options. The man who can walk away owns everything that matters. They built a system where most men can't walk away from anything. Jobs, debts, cities, even opinions. They're trapped by comfort they can't afford. The self-made man engineers exits. He designs life around principle, not paycheck. He invests in automation, delegation, and skill so his hours buy back freedom instead of another bill. That's the secret they never say on TV. Freedom compounds faster than interest once you start building it. The truth is simple. Money doesn't corrupt, weakness does. The system isn't scared of wealth. It's scared of strong men who can't be bought. That's why every independent voice gets labeled dangerous. Independence doesn't shout. It simply refuses the offer. The moment you stop trading truth for convenience, you're out of their reach. And the more men who make that move, the faster the architecture of control cracks. The matrix doesn't fall through protest. It collapses through prosperity earned by those who no longer need its approval. That's the economic rebellion they dread, and it's already happening one disciplined man at a time. Freedom isn't a feeling, it's infrastructure. The men who stay free don't hope for it, they engineer it. Every rule of modern control targets dependency, so every move toward independence must become architecture. Most people build their lives like tents. Cheap, temporary, easy to fold. The self-made man builds like stone. He designs foundations that outlast emotion. A business that earns while he sleeps. A network that multiplies while he rests. Skills that print value without permission. These are not luxuries, they're armor. The Matrix can't cage a man whose systems keep him fed, focused, and unstoppable even when the world panics. That's why they flood you with urgency. So you never sit still long enough to design anything permanent. The first system you must build is time control. The system steals it minute by minute. Meeting screens, noise. A man who schedules his day owns his future. Block your hours like territory and defend them like a kingdom. Mornings for training, afternoons for building, nights for learning. Routine isn't prison. It's precision. Chaos breeds compliance. Order breeds clarity. The man who controls his calendar can't be enslaved by someone else's. Most people spend their time selling hours for cash. A builder spends hours buying decades of freedom. That's the real leverage. Time that compounds instead of dissolves. Once you master that rhythm, you start moving differently, speaking differently. Your life gains weight because every moment now has a mission. Next, you build skill systems. Money follows mastery. The problem is most men diversify their distractions, not their abilities. They learn just enough to survive, never enough to dominate. The system likes that. It keeps you replaceable. But when you pick a skill, study it, refine it, and package it for the world, you become a weapon. Copywriting, sales, tech, fitness, storytelling. Anything that converts effort into independence. The self-made man builds a portfolio of precision. Skills that feed each other, protect each other, and produce without oversight. That's why schools teach generalism. It creates employees. Specialization creates entrepreneurs. The more irreplaceable your craft, the less they can command you. And when nobody can command you, you've already stepped outside their jurisdiction. Then you construct income systems. One stream is risk. Multiple streams are sovereignty. The system teaches one job, one paycheck, one boss. That's containment. Real builders design pipelines. Digital products, service businesses, content, investments. The goal isn't luxury, it's insulation. You want income that flows even if platforms ban you, governments tax you, or economies shift. It's not paranoia. It's preparedness. Every empire that fell ignored redundancy. Build backups before you need them. Automate what can be automated. Delegate what shouldn't consume your focus. And guard your primary revenue engine like a fortress. The moment your cash flow stops depending on approval, you're outside the grid. That's why censorship fails against true builders. They own their distribution. The next layer is the network. A strong man alone is force. A strong network is dominance. Isolation is a system's best defense. It convinces you you're crazy for thinking freely. All brotherhood destroys that illusion. Surround yourself with producers, thinkers, and executors who live by discipline, not drama. Trade resources, feedback, and opportunities like a private economy. The government has policies, you have protocols. Shared accountability multiplies growth. In a circle of builders, weakness gets exposed fast and corrected faster. That's why weak societies mock brotherhood. They know once men collaborate with purpose, they stop needing permission from authority. Build your tribe quietly, protect it fiercely, expand it strategically. Knowledge is another system. The matrix floods the web with confusion, opinions, outrage, endless contradiction. To fight that, you build a private library. Read timeless texts. Finance, philosophy, psychology, war. Study case studies, not gossip. Learn from men who built empires before algorithms existed. Then document everything you learn. Turn it into frameworks, checklists, and rules you can teach. Knowledge only becomes power when it's structured. Every note you organize becomes another line of code in your freedom system. That's why most people forget what they read. They consume randomly. You study tactically. Your notes become maps. Your maps become navigation for others. Soon your mind becomes the machine the matrix can't rewrite. Well, physical systems matter too. You can't lead a chaotic life from a chaotic body. Health is control. Strength is clarity. Sleep, fuel, and movement are mechanical, not emotional. You lift not for aesthetics, but for governance. A strong body obeys command. A weak one negotiates. Train daily, not for a look, but for leverage. A man who can't control his appetite, habits, or heartbeat will never control his empire. The system wants men overstimulated, underrested, and ashamed of their power. Your body is your last unmonitored territory. Guard it. When your mind and muscles operate as one, there's no algorithm strong enough to override that signal. The environment completes the structure. The city drains focus. The wrong home drains discipline. Design your space like a command center. Minimal noise, maximum order. Every item has purpose. Every screen has strategy. Remove chaos from your surroundings and clarity will invade your mind. The system hides behind clutter. Notifications, traffic, gossip. You defeat it through stillness. A well-designed environment feeds execution automatically. When your workspace is sacred, your behavior becomes sacred too. Freedom thrives where noise dies. That's the architecture of autonomy. Clean inputs, pure outputs. Digital systems are the new battleground. Build assets you own. Domains, lists, private communities. The platforms you don't control will always betray you eventually. One rule of sovereignty. Never build your empire on rented land. Use platforms to attract, but drive traffic to property you own. Host your knowledge, control your data, protect your privacy. Learn cybersecurity the way warriors learn swordsmanship. It's survival. In a world that spies through screens, the man who understands encryption becomes invisible. Anonymity isn't paranoia. It's prudence. The more of your operations exist beyond public platforms, the harder it is for anyone to pull your plug. The last system is mindset automation. Your habits must operate like software. No emotion, no negotiation, just execution. Write your non-negotiables down and follow them religiously. Train, read, create, build, reflect. Every repetition writes new code. Within months, your routines start running without thought. That's when freedom compounds. Most people use discipline as punishment. Builders use it as programming. You shouldn't wake up and wonder what to do. You wake up and your code runs automatically. That's how men become unstoppable. Not through bursts of motivation, but through systems that don't require permission from mood. The world respects consistency more than genius because genius flickers and consistency builds dynasties. You don't break control through emotion. You break it through engineering. Every system you build removes another chain. Income replaces dependence. Fitness replaces fragility. All brotherhood replaces isolation. Knowledge replaces confusion. Design replaces chance. Once enough of these stack, control reverses. The same world that used to drain you starts fueling you. That's the transformation the Matrix fears most. Not rebellion, but replacement. The self-made man doesn't fight their system. He outbuilds it until theirs collapses from irrelevance. That's the quiet revolution already in motion, one well-built routine at a time. Pressure is the single element that divides builders from bystanders. Most people spend their entire lives trying to reduce pressure, while the self-made man learns to convert it into energy. Every setback, delay, and rejection becomes fuel because pressure exposes truth. It strips comfort, ego, and excuses until only strength remains. When life tightens around you, that's not punishment. It's calibration. The system uses pressure to break the weak. You use it to measure growth. Every time you survive something designed to crush you, you come out harder to influence, harder to distract, harder to own. That's why the system fears men who no longer flinch. Once you see hardship as a forge instead of a threat, you stop being controllable. You become a moving engine that thrives under heat. Resilience is not optimism. It's strategy. The resilient man plans for impact. He studies his own limits the way an engineer studies stress points in steel. When he fails, he records it. When he's betrayed, he analyzes the pattern. Every pain becomes data. Most people suffer and complain. The disciplined man suffers and documents. He asks, what can this teach me? What weakness did this expose? What system can prevent it next time? That mindset transforms chaos into curriculum. You stop repeating lessons because every failure becomes a tool. This is the software of resilience. Emotion turned into blueprint, loss turned into leverage. The more you do it, the less fear you feel, because even if you fall again, you'll know exactly how to rebuild faster. The world celebrates comfort and hides consequence. That's how control works. But nothing builds authority like enduring what others avoid. Pressure reveals hierarchy. The man who can stand inside fire without complaint automatically becomes the one others follow. That's leadership at its core. Composed endurance. You don't shout resilience. You demonstrate it through posture. Calm under stress radiates power because it's rare. The crowd moves with emotion. The builder moves with evaluation. When everything burns, he becomes the man with answers. That's why the system wants everyone sensitive, reactive, and emotional, because emotional people are predictable. A calm man is unreadable, and unreadable men cannot be manipulated. Training for pressure must be deliberate. You schedule adversity into your day. Cold showers, hard workouts, early mornings, uncomfortable conversations. Controlled difficulty prepares you for uncontrolled chaos. Every small hardship you face by choice teaches your mind that discomfort is survivable. The body adapts and the brain follows. Soon, what used to intimidate you becomes routine. You start looking for challenges instead of hiding from them. That rewires ambition itself. Stress becomes a signal for growth, not danger. The modern system sells stress relief. The self-made man sells stress mastery. That's why he keeps climbing while others keep complaining. The more pressure you can carry calmly, the rarer your value becomes. When I was broke and trying to build from nothing, pressure was the only constant companion. Every bill felt like an opponent, every delay another round in the fight. I didn't escape pressure, I domesticated it. I turned anxiety into discipline. Instead of panicking over what I couldn't control, I worked twice as hard on what I could. Over time, the pattern became clear. Pressure is predictable. It always arrives before expansion. Not every breakthrough in business or mindset begins with tension. When you start to welcome that tension, instead of wishing it away, your life accelerates. Most people slow down under load. I learned to sprint through it. That's why resilience isn't inherited. It's built repetition by repetition until composure becomes instinct. Resilience engineering also means fortifying your environment. You cannot stay strong if everything around you drains strength. Audit your inputs, music, people, media, workspace. Serve anything that feeds weakness, or replace it with signals that reinforce discipline. Order in your surroundings translates into order in your mind. When pressure hits, chaos amplifies it. Structure absorbs it. Keep your systems clean, your schedule tight, your commitments realistic. Weak men drown in pressure because their lives are disorganized. Strong men rise because everything in their world is optimized to support endurance. Top preparation turns pressure from enemy to ally. Every checklist, routine, habit is armor. Financial pressure is the most common test. It crushes those who depend on one income or one approval source. Resilient builders create redundancy. Multiple skills, multiple pipelines, multiple alliances. So no single failure defines them. When one stream dries, another carries the load. This is economic resilience, and it terrifies centralized power. A man who can adapt faster than systems can restrict him, becomes immune to scarcity tactics. Inflation, layoffs, regulation, none of it destroys him because he already runs parallel structures. True freedom is not about avoiding storms. It's about designing a ship that sails through any weather. The stronger your frameworks, the calmer your response. Calm men make better moves. Calm men win longer games. Mental resilience is the root of them all. You build it through solitude and silence. In quiet, you meet the parts of yourself the world keeps distracting you from. Most people can't sit alone because silence reveals truth. They run from it, drowning in noise. The resilient man uses silence as a training ground. He studies his thoughts like an opponent's patterns. He removes useless emotion, organizes ideas, and strengthens conviction. Once your inner world becomes orderly, external chaos loses impact. You don't need external motivation when your internal dialogue is disciplined. That's why meditation, journaling, or reflection are not soft practices. They are mental weightlifting. You train clarity the same way you train muscle, repetition under load. Resilience isn't invincibility. It's recoverability. The system wants you to see failure as fatal because fatalism keeps you compliant. Resilient men understand that failure is simply feedback. They rebuild faster because they don't waste time on guilt. Every minute spent regretting is a minute stolen from redesigning. After any fall, you rebuild the routine immediately. Reset schedule, train, reestablish targets. This momentum prevents emotional paralysis. Eventually, resilience becomes reflex. You fall and stand without ceremony. That's the difference between amateurs and architects. The builder doesn't mourn broken bricks. He starts mixing new cement. Unity multiplies resilience. Brotherhood acts as reinforcement steel inside the concrete of your life. When one man cracks, the others carry load until he repairs. That's why isolation destroys so many ambitious men. They face storms alone. The system encourages individual weakness under the mask of independence. Real independence is interdependent strength. Each man disciplined in his lane, all aligned on progress. Accountability removes self-deception. A call from a brother who demands your standard is worth more than 1,000 motivational quotes. Build alliances that challenge your excuses, not comfort them. Together, you become a wall pressure cannot breach. Spiritual resilience completes the structure. You can't face chaos forever without anchoring in something larger than profit or pride. Faith, whatever form you hold it in, reminds you that purpose outlasts pain. Without it, every hardship feels personal. With it, hardship feels purposeful. That difference defines endurance. When you believe your mission carries meaning beyond circumstance, you stop reacting like a victim and start responding like a creator. The strongest men in history carried both scars and conviction. They didn't crumble under injustice because they served principles higher than comfort. That's the deepest layer of resilience. Unshakable direction. Pressure never disappears. It transfers. You either carry it consciously through discipline or unconsciously through regret. You choose discipline. The system survives by convincing you that ease is success, but the self-made man knows ease is decay. Every moment of pressure you endure today becomes capital tomorrow. Mental, physical, financial, resilience compounds. It's the only asset no market crash can touch. When you engineer your life to absorb and convert pressure, you become something the system can't predict, punish, or purchase. That's power in its purest form. The final evolution of freedom is irreversibility. Most men reach progress they can still lose. The self-made man builds power that can't be taken. Irreversibility means your identity, income, and purpose no longer depend on permission. It's not arrogance, it's architecture. The reason the world fears this kind of man is simple. He's untouchable. You can ban his platforms, but not his presence. You can attack his reputation, but not his results. The irreversible man doesn't survive storms. He benefits from them. Every obstacle becomes marketing, every attack becomes proof, every exile becomes expansion. When you no longer rely on their systems for validation or survival, you become what they can't manage. A variable they can't calculate. Irreversibility starts internally. Most people live as guests inside their own heads, renting space to opinions. The self-made man becomes landlord of his mind. He audits beliefs the way an investor audits assets. If it doesn't pay, it goes. He removes guilt disguised as morality, shame disguised as humility, and doubt disguised as realism. That mental purge builds immunity. The system can influence only what you still need from it. When approval, applause, and belonging lose currency, you start transacting in conviction. Your word becomes law because you live it daily. The irreversible man is consistent enough to be predictable, but disciplined enough to stay unpredictable to control. Skill creates leverage, but identity creates permanence. The irreversible man no longer asks, what do I do? But who am I when everything breaks? He answers with proof. He can rebuild from zero because his foundation is internal. Knowledge, adaptability, composure. These cannot be confiscated. Take away his income, he'll sell a skill. Take away his audience, he'll build another. Take away his comfort, he'll sharpen his edge. That's why cancellation fails against conviction. You can silence noise, you can't silence purpose. Every attempt to erase him ends up magnifying him because real strength doesn't vanish. It reappears as something smarter, sharper, harder to trace. Money loses meaning once independence becomes identity. Wealth isn't the goal. Leverage is. The irreversible man designs wealth to defend time, not decorate lifestyle. He measures assets by control. Control of schedule, control of geography, control of decisions. He earns so that he can refuse. That refusal is what terrifies the system. The man who can say no cannot be managed. That's why the modern world conditions you to say yes. To overtime, to debt, to distraction, to convenience. The irreversible man says yes only to mission. Every dollar either reinforces or removes a chain, and he treats money accordingly. He owns investments that produce while he trains, reads, or rests. Ownership without dependence is the ultimate rebellion. When the matrix tries to erase a strong man, it always exposes itself. Attacks reveal truth. The louder the opposition, the more power the message holds. The irreversible man expects resistance. He interprets it as proof of relevance. Censorship is the tax on influence. You don't pay it unless you're changing something. Instead of shrinking, he expands distribution. Mirrors, backups, networks, every attempt to silence him forces replication, and replication multiplies reach. Systems built on control collapse under duplication. That's why legacy creators never vanish. They spread. When your ideas live inside other minds, you've already outlived the algorithm. Their resilience built the engine. Reputation powers the transmission. The irreversible man guards his name not through perfection, but through consistency. He does what he says publicly, relentlessly. Over time, reliability becomes its own brand. People trust him not because he's flawless, but because he's traceable. They've seen him bleed, rebuild, and rise again. That visibility makes slander ineffective. When your actions broadcast integrity louder than words, lies die quickly. The modern world rewards masks. The irreversible man is armor without disguise. Every scar becomes a credential. Every loss becomes a license to lead. That transparency breaks psychological warfare because manipulation feeds on mystery. He leaves none. Discipline protects freedom better than defense. The irreversible man doesn't prepare for peace. He trains for turbulence. He knows life will test him again and again, so he stays in practice. Body sharp, mind stable, emotions trained to yield under control. His habits are fortifications, not routines. Every morning repels entropy. Every hour of focus is another layer of protection. People think discipline restricts freedom. In truth, it guarantees it. Chaos steals time. Order multiplies it. The world collapses in cycles, but the disciplined man keeps compounding. That's why every crisis transfers power to the prepared. Preparation is prophecy. Brotherhood cements irreversibility. One man can resist. Many can reform. The irreversible man mentors others not from ego, but from necessity. Every student who learns self-governance expands the network of independence. That's how systems lose, through distributed sovereignty. He shares frameworks, not feelings. Skills, not slogans. Men like this create underground economies of control, private ventures, knowledge circles, capital groups, where loyalty is built on proof, not personality. These micro-societies operate like clean code within a corrupted network. The matrix can't delete them because they self-replicate faster than central authority can react. That's how real revolutions hide in plain sight. Psychological warfare ends when your peace no longer depends on quiet. The irreversible man carries calm into chaos because he recognizes patterns. He sees outrage as programming, panic as marketing, and fear as currency. By refusing to trade in those emotions, he bankrupts the system's influence. Calm is resistance. Composure is rebellion. When everyone else reacts, he calculates. When everyone else panics, he plans. His detachment isn't apathy. It's strategy. The fewer emotional hooks the world can use against him, the more invisible he becomes to manipulation. That invisibility is power. It's the stealth mode of sovereignty. Legacy makes independence permanent. The irreversible man builds structures that produce value long after he's gone. Businesses that educate. Assets that feed families. Ideas that outlive the body. Legacy is a multiplication problem. How many lives your discipline can improve beyond your own? The system fears this more than rebellion because legacy bypasses destruction. You can't cancel a blueprint that others keep building from. Every generation that inherits self-discipline multiplies autonomy. When fathers teach sons how to earn without begging, when mentors teach students how to think without permission, the entire control grid weakens. That's the quiet contagion of independence. The irreversible man's final weapon is peace. Not the passive peace of escape, but the active peace of purpose. He doesn't chase conflict, but he never avoids it. He chooses his battles by principle, not impulse. Peace becomes armor, not avoidance. In a world addicted to chaos, calm men become mythic. Their presence alone disrupts systems built on hysteria. You can't manipulate serenity. You can't cancel clarity. And that's why the system fears them, because they are proof that freedom is still possible. Every truly independent man reminds the world that control was always voluntary. Once you understand that, you stop asking for liberty. You live it. The irreversible man isn't loud. He's consistent. He doesn't need validation because he's already verified by evidence. His existence exposes the lie that freedom requires permission. The system can't predict him, punish him, or purchase him. He moves, builds, teaches, and multiplies until his very presence becomes defiance. That's the end game of the self-made path. Not rebellion for rebellion's sake, but permanence through self-creation. When you become irreversible, you stop surviving the world and start shaping it. That's the point where the matrix stops hunting you, because it finally realizes it can't.